Welcome back. Another big topic in the news this past week, the scandals plaguing the Pentagon involving sexual assaults in the military.
An annual Pentagon report shows an alarming rise in military sexual assaults. The report comes just days after an abuse prevention officer in the Air Force was arrested and charged with sexual assaults.
NBC's Danielle Lee filed this report from the Capitol where the reaction has been discussed.
President Obama is demanding change after a troubling report on sexual assaults in the military. It shows the number of cases that went unreported skyrocketed from 19,000 to 26,000 last year. Reported sexual assaults also rose by 6% to a total of 3,374.
When you engage in this kind of behavior, that's not patriotic. It's a crime. And we have to do everything we can to root this out.
Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel is promising to come down hard on the perpetrators.
All of our leaders at every level in this institution will be held accountable for preventing and responding to sexual assault in their ranks and under their commands.
On Capitol Hill, angry senators lashed out at the Air Force Chief of Staff during a budget hearing.
Could you surmise that it may well be that a victim has no faith in the chain of command on this issue?
The report comes as the chief sexual abuse prevention officer for the Air Force faces accusations he committed the very crime he's supposed to prevent. Lieutenant Colonel Jeff Krasinski is accused of groping a woman in a Virginia parking lot. Adding to the controversy are 2 sexual assault convictions overturned by 3-star generals this year. Now some lawmakers are seeking to strip commanding officers of their ability to reverse a jury's verdict.
If a victim does not believe that the system is capable of believing her, there's no point in risking your entire career.
A persistent problem lawmakers worry could undermine the military's mission. In Washington, I'm Danielle Lee, NBC News.
So about a year ago, Michael and Geri Lynn did a story with us, and it was a really popular story because we talked about something that so few people wanted to talk about, and at least here in our local media market, it had never been talked about before, and it was about the fact that still today there are still so many rapes happening in our military, and Michael highlighted the fact that rapes aren't just happening to women, they're happening to males too. And it's not a pleasant conversation to talk about, and I think that's why a lot of people don't talk about it. But Michael and his wife, Geri Lynn, have pushed the issue. And when I say push, they are pushing. They are involved in documentaries. They call me and email me and Facebook me every time there's something going on, and I'm grateful because they're pushing a topic that we really ought to be talking more about.
Absolutely.
So thank you guys for joining us.
You're welcome.
Welcome.
Tell us a little bit about the documentary that you're working on right now and how that is bringing more light to this problem.
Well, Geri Lynn can tell you that. She's the
Producer,
director, co-director and producer.
I'm working along with Michael L. Miller from 9 Point Productions, which is a local production company in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I chose to work with Michael L. Miller because he is a veteran and he really gets what is going on with this particular issue. Our mission, if you will, is to shine light on military sexual trauma with respect to how it affects men and provide the men with a platform to come forward and feel comfortable to speak. This is not a gender issue. It affects both men and women, although men have kind of remained in the background because it seems to be more of a challenge for men to come forward.
And go ahead.
Michael, that report that we saw there, I mean, it's just astounding how many they think are still unreported in the military versus...
By DOD's own account, they say 26,000, okay? It went up to. Those numbers are actually lower than, by their own admission, anywhere between 60 and 80% off.
Wow.
And
So
the number of
higher.
men, it's actually the 56% of the rapes are done to men. Out of that 26,000, there was 14,000 were men. Okay, and most men don't come forward because of a lot of different reasons. But basically, well, when I was raped myself when I was 19, I never came forward. I wanted to spend 20 years in the military, and I knew that it was futile to go forward and tell them it would ruin my career.
And When a year ago, when Michael and I did the story about his horrific experience when he was so young, it was one of the very first times. I mean, this was still sort of in the infancy stage of your advocacy, where you were talking publicly about what happened, and you had mentioned at the time that it was almost a therapy, a little bit therapeutic for you to finally, after all these years, talk about it.
Well, true. I don't mean to contradict, but actually we've been on this trail for 13 years. It's just recently that people in news media are willing to listen to us. I mean, nobody wanted to hear the story, except you were the first. So it's difficult because men can't have their voices heard by the national media, which is a problem. That's why we made the movie. I come up with the concept of the movie, actually. Just came to me one day, and I mentioned it to my wife, and she says, "Oh, good, I'm going to make the movie," and she did.
And again, Geri, Lynn, this film focuses on men specifically. Was it difficult to find people willing to tell their stories?
Thank goodness for social media. It was not as difficult as I thought it would be. My goal was to find men of varied ages that would represent different eras, from Vietnam era to the Gulf era to Afghanistan and Iraq. I also wanted to show people of different ethnicities. I also wanted to show a variety of stories. Not every man's story is the same. I wanted to show men that were not all white, straight men. Our movie has an array of ethnicities and stories, and I won't say any more than that, but I think when people come out to see Justice Denied, they will be entertained, and they will also be surprised at just how virulent this malignancy is in our armed forces, and the need to make changes immediately.
And your argument is that this trend will continue unless the Pentagon, the military, sits down and makes some structural changes in the reporting of rape. What else, Michael?
It has to be taken out of the chain of command. I mean, they can't. It's too ancestral to handle. The problem exists for hundreds of years. This is not nothing new. But they've been fighting this for 40 years, and Congress and the Senate keep saying we need to do more studies. I mean, how many more studies do we need to do? You got 40 years of studies, enough already. Just put it into it, take it out of the chain of command, like other countries have done, and they remove the problem. I mean, you're never going to get rid of rape, but there's more men raped in the military than in federal prisons in this country. That's a number that shouldn't be, okay? And it's not because we have a lot of rapists, okay? It's because we let the same rapists go and keep doing it again and again. An average rapist, according to the APA, does 300 to 600 rapes in their lifetime.
Oh my God.
I'd like to add
Shocking,
that
yeah.
This is a malignancy that has metastasized within a system. And I think we need to look at the system, the culture of the system, and realize that we might want to look at having civilian oversight as part of the solution. We need to look at the person in the environment. And what I mean by that is not just the commanders that are in charge, but also the survivors and also the perpetrators. We need to look at the culture of the perpetrator.
When the commander himself doesn't believe the rape existed, most times, the perpetrator is a supervisor. So you have to go back to work with the person who raped you. I mean, think of that, having to go back to work with the person who raped you. There's been incidences where I know one young lady, she was raped by her supervisor. The commander didn't believe her, and they court-martialed her for adultery. She wasn't married, he was, and they never court-martialed him.
Wow.
So it's let's get rid of the victims because we don't need them around. Okay, they're the problem in the military, they think.
Yeah. I think in going forward, the need would be to be solution-focused, to look at what's working and what isn't working. Obviously, the SHARP or SARC offices are having their challenges right now. And that needs to be looked at and evaluated and obviously changed. Again, I think we need to include civilian oversight, other professionals, be it therapists, psychologists, law enforcement individuals, to change that culture. And I think that checks and balances would be, what am I trying to say? Checks and balances is what's needed.
By putting that documentary out there to the public, as it will be, I mean, any of us will be able to see this, and you are trying to show everyone, people not in the military too, and not related to the military, what's happening, to really raise the outrage level on what's happening here.
Absolutely. I think it's really important for the civilian community to see what's happening. Obviously, the military sexual trauma community is aware of what's happening, as our government is becoming more aware of just how horrific this is and the need for immediate change. I think that change will come more quickly if the public is outraged, if they go to the phones, if they talk to their senators and congresspersons and say, listen, this is not okay. This must stop, and it must stop now.
The hard thing to understand is that they say that, oh, the Senate now is outraged, and so is Congress. Well, they get a report every year in April. It's mandated from DOD about military sexual assaults. They get this report every year.
Wow.
Now all of a sudden they're outraged. How come they wasn't outraged last year or the year before that? I mean, you know, you see these things, and now it's just because it hits the news. There's a lot of stuff going on, and now they're outraged.
And there are people in Washington who are on your side and who are pushing your efforts. I know that we've talked about Congresswoman Jackie Spears from the San Francisco area is probably the largest outspoken person. But there is quite a pushback in Washington to change the way sexual assaults are reported in the military.
Well, last year, okay, we had the STOP Act up. You know, Congresswoman Spears put it up for us, and the Armed Services Committee wouldn't let it to the floor for a vote. But they did allow the bill for prisoners to go to the floor for a vote, and it went right through right through Congress, Senate, and President Obama signed it in October. I mean, not that prisoners shouldn't be raped, but you're not going to protect our military before protecting prisoners. She just reintroduced the STOP Act in April, and we'll see. We'll see if it makes it to the floor for a vote this time.
We're just about out of time, so I want to let people know this documentary, Justice Denied, will be out very soon.
It will be premiering at the Chemo Theater on June 8th at 6:30 p.m. And I hope you'll all come out and support us. Thank you.
You can get your tickets at holdmytickets.com.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you both. It's great seeing you. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much.
And be sure to keep it here tonight for Eyewitness News 4 at 5 and 10.